relax.
Yeah.
That's. But I think you have good information to share. Just review. You got to know what you're talking about, and you did say something about the police. It's useful information for the police. Well, I wouldn't give that in to someone to oppose you. The point is that they don't actually need access to all of our location data. They to solve crimes. They're not using it to solve crimes. So I would work on. I mean, that's very, very careful rhetorical analysis. So, but I mean, you never. Whenever you're advocating for any policy, don't give your opposition the argument to make. So.
Good.
I have one more comment. When you asked about how often is this used, the answer to that is actually really simple, and that is that we have absolutely no way of knowing, and that's why there is a reporting requirement in the bill, so that we can capture a snapshot and understand for the first time how often these surveillance techniques are being used, because right now we really don't know that information at all.
Although there is some of that on our county flyer. We don't have it for Texas, but we do know that it's millions.
For the national data, but we don't have
millions of people. So, hands up in the back. Yes.
I have a quick question regarding the key component number 2.
Yeah.
What does it mean for the order of tracking to be sealed?
Yes. When you get that electronic version of the presentation and you click through on the link and you look at this part of the code, you will find that orders for electronic information are sealed by law.
Forever.
Forever, period, end of story. The reason we have so little information about how much of this is happening in Texas is because all orders are sealed by law.
Okay, so I read this backwards then. So this is only saying that you can only seal for 180 days.
That's correct.
That's why I was confused.
Yes, well, that...
I was like, why do we want
They
to
have
seal?
privacy, but we don't.
Absolutely. That is absolutely right. And the Stingray is an even worse case because they all sign non-disclosure agreements that the PDs that use it do. And the non-disclosure agreement requires them to non-disclose that they've ever used it. Some of the police departments even non-disclose to their own prosecutors, meaning that they show up with evidence that they will not disclose how they got it.
Is this to protect Harris Radio from any liability?
Probably.
Okay.
Yes, it's a corporate non-disclosure agreement. Yeah.
But this non-disclosure, it's a very novel way to avoid talking about something in this capacity, because I'm surprised nobody's picking holes in it. So if I said to you, let's commit an act of terrorism, I want to sign a non-disclosure
I know, right?
agreement.
Let's sign a non-disclosure agreement.
And then I tell the judge, I'm sorry, I can't talk about this, and contempt doesn't even apply.
Right.
I mean, this is crazy.
It is crazy.
It is being litigated in Florida, and that's
And I think it could be litigated here.
point of the spear.
My background was in the Public Information Act for many, many years doing that lobbying policy around public information. I think it wouldn't survive litigation here.
I do want to just drop in there, though, that we don't want to overemphasize the Stingray when we're talking about this. The vast majority of that we know of the data gathering is from tower
That's
dumps.
right. The vast majority of what's actually being done is tower information, yeah.
So based on that, so am I correct in the assumption that even if your cell phone is off, it's still you're still talking to a tower, correct?
Yeah.
You have to literally take your battery, physically take the battery from the
Yes,
phone
that is
to
my
stop the
understanding.
tracking.
You have to remove the battery. Correct. So take your battery out, walk around with your battery out.
It's possible.
If you're
Yes.
going someplace you don't know the cops don't want you to go, you have to take the battery out of your phone.
Or get one of those shielding bags.
Faraday pouch.
Continue. Yes. Question.
I'd like Carly to give us some insight as to what typically happens after somebody like us has come into the office after we leave. What is typically then happens with the material that you've left? Is it just, circular filed? Or?
Well, I can only speak to the office that I worked in because it depends on the representative or the senator and personal style. So, I mean, I worked for David Simpson, who sees himself as a representative of all Texans and wanted to know. Our staff together read every single bill that was on the floor, even local and consent. No one does that, right? Oh, but David Simpson wants to know and have information on every vote that he's doing. So I would guess that if if the legislator you're talking to is not on the committee that's hearing this bill or not otherwise particularly concerned about this issue, that first visit this piece of paper is going to go on a desk and it's going to sit there, and that's why you follow up, right? That's why you follow, and you also have to make the ask. I think that. Right. I mean, this calendar that we have is an excellent calendar because it tells you in the time frame what ask you are going to be making, and the first one is we need co-authors on the bill. So, you know.
So you're saying in most offices, it's not even going to get past the staffer. The representative's never even going to know that you were there.
That is my guess.
Well, I would just disagree a little. I mean, I agree Simpson is an extreme case of making sure that everything is kept. But my experience is that once the bill has a bill number, there is a folder. And every member has a folder with that bill number on it in a filing cabinet. And for the most part, the documents that are brought in with that bill number on it, at a minimum, go in the folder. Now that doesn't sound like a lot, but there will come a day when the folder is pulled out because the bill is on the floor. This is for those members for whom they're not on the committee and they're not particularly interested in the issue. They have that bill folder, they have a flyer in it, they pull it out the day that it's on the calendar because their chief of staff's job is to give them all the bill folders for the calendar that they're having to vote on that day. And then they sit at their desk, and as the bills go by, they're opening each folder. So part of why we make our flyers bright yellow is so that they look at them when they're in a folder. And the first moment that member has thought about the issue is the day of a floor vote when they open the folder and they pull out the handful of material. And our bright yellow flyer is like, ooh, what's that? So, you know, do they all pay attention? Of course not. Does it help to have made those visits, drop those flyers, and make sure there's like a trail of crumbs leading towards that floor vote? It absolutely makes a difference.
And I would also add that it matters about making the ask. For example,
Yes.
if you just show up and say, I'm here to just educate you generally about this issue and we don't have a bill number and don't quite have our act together, you're right, that may never get to the member.
Right, because there's no folder.
If you go in and you say, I'm here about this bill number, I'd like your boss to be a co-author, you know, she was a co-author last session and I'd like her this time, or, you know, I know she's new, but maybe, you know, but this many were in it last time. If you have a specific ask, that ask, in my experience, will get to the member. I mean, if someone's asked you to be a co-author, and then Brian's going to follow up on the floor and ask him himself.
Part of the purpose of visiting the freshmen before we have a bill number, because we are going to do this without a bill number, and that is the moment when, you know, things are most likely to get thrown away. But the purpose of that is really to find supporters. So, you know, if we had walked into Simpson's office as a freshman and presented this bill, his staff would very likely have been like, yeah, absolutely. And that yes is kind of what we're looking for from the first visit. So if we mine all those incoming freshmen who come from all different backgrounds to find the probably 10 or 15 who are actually just right off the bat going to be very supportive. And we will know that, and we will write it in our log, and when we have a bill number, we have something to go from. We go back and we ask them to co-author the bill. So there is a point to these early visits even before we have a bill number. And there was a question all the way in the back.
Well, I had a question. Do you have a counter story of abuse of this information by the police?
We have only the fact that there is information being collected about virtually everyone. I mean, there's almost no information about how it's used. And so part of our bill creates public information about how cell phone location data is actually used. We believe from statements that have been made by judges, who are the only ones who in the end get to see this information, there are judges who have made public statements that the information that is collected is vastly beyond what was needed for specific cases. And they have come out and made kind of important cutting-edge legal statements, but they've said themselves that what really needs to happen is something legislative. So, no, we do not have the perfect anecdote.
If I may add to that, part of the reason why we don't know as well is because when you're being prosecuted, as a defendant, you don't know to ask those questions. So probable cause is being created, right? So if they have all your geolocational info that creates a profile on you, and they use that to get you on something, unrelated to the real reason why they're coming after you, you wouldn't have any idea that that data or that information was being collected on you. So you wouldn't know to even ask those questions. So that's why it's invisible,
That's true. There is a sort of vast array of reasons why we just don't know. And some of it is because it's all sealed. Some of it is these NDAs. Some of it is that it doesn't come out in the court cases often. There are judges who have seen it and made some public statements, but even those are few.
Your tail light happened to be out when they knew very well that you were carrying drugs because of the profile they gained on you, but they couldn't figure out how to stop you. So they knew, it's these kind of things that happen all the time.
Yes.
So how does the Freedom of Information Act play in all this? Has anybody ever done a request? Is that something that can even be
Yes.
gathered, that information?
And I wish that Greg were here. He's actually on vacation. He was intending to come. Prior to last session, we did a whole bunch of Public Information Act requests, and we got a variety of bits and pieces. Invoices for the cell phone company's portal system. Invoices are public by law.
So that's the bottom graph.
So
Okay.
there is some information that's been put together based on the amount that localities and the state spends on getting this data, but it's very piecemeal. So, yeah.
Are there any instances in which you would like us to refer someone specifically to you, or to maybe mention you by name? Any of the principals involved in this that you could think of? Are we gonna be
Sure,
are there gonna be like regular check-ins?
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely,
how's
yes,
this working?
no. Once this all gets, really this is the beginning of what will be meeting every 2 weeks, specific assignments, lots of conversation by email. There should be nobody feeling like they're kind of working on their own. Everybody's part of a team. So, does anyone else want to do a last practice, or should we call it a day? All right. Well, I think then.
Before we call it a day, though, in case you want to sign up for the Legislative Action Network, you want to receive emails by the coalition, maybe you want to join PAG's Legislative Network because we have a lot of different issues. If you would like, we can collect your information quickly, and depending on how you answer, we'll send the data to the coalition, or we can have you as a part of our Legislative Action Network. So if you're interested, please come see David, who's sitting with me.
And there's a sign-up sheet in the
Oh, and
back
the
as
sign-up
well.
in the back, great.
Let's
All right.
just collect everyone's information by our own personal stingray device.
Yes.
Good, yeah.
Then we would have to non-disclose how we were organizing.
You aren't going to do assignments now?
I think I'm going to hold on assignments, because what I'd really like is for people to write on the volunteer sign-up form